I've been wanting to make this decklist video for a while. Haven't really caught the moment and the inspiration synchronistically together until now. I was hoping to post this in July, but whatever. So this is my Dream Pop decklist. If you don't know what Dream Pop is, it's a category of music that once upon a time I didn't even know was a category of music. I thought it was just what people called playlists sometimes, but it is a category of music that's got kind of this really generally soft and diffused atmospheric type of instrumentals, vocals, and editing, whatever. And for me, it's kind of my go-to in the summer. There's something kind of warm and hazy about it. I love that the vocals are often like off in the distance behind clouds, and it just feels very ephemeral. And that kind of inspired me to look through my decks and be like, what decks do I associate with this kind of music? I'm going to put a couple of playlists that I like to listen to in the description if you're on computer and want to open that in another window and turn the volume down just enough so you can have it kind of ambiently in the background, because I cannot play music, sadly, in this. So let's just hop into the deck list here. I have a bunch to go with. Ooh, where do I start? I think I'm going to pull out a deck that I don't know that I've even talked about, and that is the Starchild Tarot. This was one of my first couple of decks back in the day. I just, fell in love with the beautiful aesthetic of it. Will admit this is still a deck that I need the guidebook for, but I quite like it for that. And when I do pull it out for readings now and again, it always gives me exactly what I need to hear. And I think it fits perfectly with Dream Pop type vibes. The backs are beautiful. It generally has this very dreamy, celestial type of atmosphere and pastel but colorful palette. So this is a Danielle Noel deck. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this might have been her first tarot deck that she'd come out with. And this is the Starchild edition, so it's not the first edition, but I quite like this one. And it just has this beautiful, soft, dreamy, going into another world type of feel to it, which is what Dream Pop definitely gives me. This kind of being transported somewhere else, somewhere ephemeral and a little bit fantastical at times, and emotional, kind of hazy. This is one of my favorite cards. I can't remember the character's name in Bones, but she reminds me of the boss at the Smithsonian. I'm blanking on her name right now, and the actress, I don't know her name either, but yeah, love that card. Like I said, it's still a deck that I need the guidebook to really read with, because it does its own thing in some places with the imagery, and I would have to probably do more of a deck study and work with it for a prolonged amount of time to just feel like I don't need the guidebook. But I like diving into Danielle's writings anyway, of the decks that I have of hers. I really do enjoy reading her guidebooks. So I've got cards that are, or is this? Yeah, I think this is an extra card, Akashic Records. So, does its own thing, has a bit of that, star seedy thing that I guess some people don't like. I don't mind it. I take what works and leave what doesn't for me. But yeah, beautiful deck. Was kind of among the first few that came to mind for me when I put on a playlist and was looking through decks and thinking who would fit into this category of decks. So that is the Starchild Tarot. The next one, I also don't know if I've talked about or if I did a walkthrough when I got it. Every Little Thing You Do is Magic. So with Dream Pop, and me feeling like it's very much my summer comfort type music, this deck kind of comes to mind for me because it's kind of like, it's a collage deck, but there's something that makes me feel like I would have liked this as a teenager. There's just something to the style of art that I think the blending of illustration and then the collage, it's just kind of fun. It, again, does its own thing. It's not quite like an RWS clone, but it's still pretty readable. There are a couple of cards in here where it really does something different than I'm used to, but that's kind of fun, you know? I find it super fascinating that this, I don't think that's quite a penguin, is it? What is that bird? But that it's kind of like leaving lava. Very visceral type of Six of Swords image. But yeah, this one's kind of like a cheeky, fun, like I just kind of feel like being in my room as a teenager and pulling cards and this being the deck, or doing a reading for a friend and this being the deck, because it's not like too serious, but it's also got depth to it at the same time. The other thing with this deck that's kind of fun, for one, changes the court cards, and it did so in a way that I thought was really neat. If I could find a couple of the other ones here, let's see. Got Oracle, Champion. I don't know that I will catch one of each, so I'm forgetting what the other one was called. Okay, so for the pages, we have apprentices, which I really love. So this is the Apprentice of Wands. And then for the knights, we have champions. The queens are the Oracle, and then the kings are Elder, which I thought was a neat switch up, you know, for the court cards to kind of quickly, especially if you struggle with court cards, it kind of quickly can connect you with an aspect of what the page, the knight, the queen, and the king are sort of about. So neat play on that. It also shuffles really nice. And I do believe there's, other than the guidebook that this comes with, there is some other type of book that's a bit more of a workbook. I perused it at a local shop that I'm taking a class at, actually. And it looks intriguing. I stopped myself from getting it, though, because I don't need another workbook. I have quite a few, just in general, that I'm either working on myself or that I have and want to work through before I bring in another workbook. But the guidebook does this pretty cool thing where for each card you get a bit of a description. A reverse meaning gives you a stone to associate with it, with the keywords of that. It's got mood music, so it gives you a song, and then scent, which is kind of neat, and then the numerology at the bottom. So it's kind of for a small little corner at the bottom, or section at the bottom, gives you a lot of interesting things to play with if you want to try connecting with a card that way. I will admit that sometimes the songs aren't quite a match for me, but I haven't, you know, every single time looked up the song to kind of dig into that. But even just that part of it made me feel like there's something like summer fun listening to music and just relaxing, and I don't know, having that sort of experience where music and art collide type thing is just a fun deal with this deck. It's pretty fun to read with also when I've read with it. I have not yet pulled it into my more of my journaling practice, but it's kind of a neat one. And it's just, I don't know, it's fun. For me, it feels like a summer deck because it's a little more on the playful side. But yeah, summer or spring, I would say. But that is my second deck that I would put in this list. Every little thing you do is magic tarot. Very cool. I think I'll go with this next one, which I just did the video of my deck study with this. which I haven't gotten too much further with since that video, just because I'm having pen issues, and the last thing I really want to do is change up what I'm doing, because part of what made me excited to do the whole deck study was to have the inks complementing the whole aesthetic of my own personal guidebook for this deck. But I do have a couple of spreads that I would like to do before summer's over with this deck in particular, and that is the Shewolf Tarot. Love the backs of this, and then 100% it suits the vibe and energy of dream pop, of summer, of kind of like becoming yourself or coming into yourself. There's something about this deck that very much feels like an invitation to do that, and to really, at least from a feminine energy perspective, sink into that. And the deck I've been pairing it with has been Desert Rites, which I think also on its own would be going in this list, but I've been pairing them together, so figured I would show them both together. So I think what I wound up realizing is quite a few of the decks on this list are collage, and I don't know, maybe there's something about that with like dream pop music, because it's like got usually a lot of layers to it, and it's like a lot of transparent layers on top of each other. It kind of, in a way, is like audio collage to my ears. And so I think collage decks were coming forward to sync up with that. And I was pulling out decks, but yeah, both of these pair really nicely together, but then individually, like I think Desert Rites is such a great daily draw kind of deck, and the way that the little guidebook is written is, I don't know, it comes through like if you wanted to have a deck to work with your guides or something like that, have like a message from spirit. I don't know if I'll be able to catch this without glare, if someone wants to pause and read how the guidebook reads, but it just feels like a message from spirit type deck, and works really well for me paired with this to give me something, whether I want to dive into the guidebook or just lean into the keywords. It just kind of balances with this deck really well. Because this one, for me, I've had to do a deck study to really understand like what is going on in the Seven of Cups. Like I get it, but it feels like it's worth digging into her descriptions of why the imagery was chosen the way it was. Ooh, Wheel of Fortune and Cocoon. Yeah, there's something a little, like, the thing with dream pop for me is that it feels a little romantic, but it's sort of like self-romancing is how I think of it. Or, I don't know, it just kind of feels like that for me, where it's like romancing your own life and your own self a bit. And this deck, I really feel Shewolf is one for that in my collection. And, you know, part of it is that pretty much all the imagery in it, I think, if not all, is feminine, but it's also got this, like, warm, invigorating kind of energy that's kind of trying to wake you up to yourself. And so that is my pair for that. And a quick little look at the guidebook that I was making for myself. This has been so fun. But yeah, I've been having trouble with this pink pen, so it's kind of on pause at the moment, and probably once August is over, I'm definitely sliding that back into the cabinet until next summer, probably, when I feel reconnected to that energy. The next pair is another one where I'm like, have I spoken about these decks? I don't know. But yeah, the Odyssey Oracle, which this is out of print. And it's very unfortunate because these are great decks and they're also beautifully produced. But this was an early Oracle deck for me. Kind of took a leap before I was really sure. I knew how I liked working with Oracle decks. And I'm glad I did, because I'd be sad if I missed this one. But yeah, I think the people who had this, here, I'm just going to do it like this because we're going to do a pairing. The people that created these decks, Threads of Fate, they kind of shut down. So all of their decks are out of print, and there had been one more tarot, I think it was, or maybe it was an oracle that I wish I had gotten. But it's okay. I have 2 of the oracle decks, so at least happy for that. This deck, these are like the really vibrant colors out of these, because most of these have a soft kind of palette where it's kind of diffused, which is, matches the sort of listening experience that Dream Pop has. But something about these still fits in for it for me, I think, because, again, the collage style, more so with this tarot deck, which is Tarot of the Cosmic Seed, which now is mass market. This one's the indie version, but I have to say the mass market, it looks like they did a really beautiful job staying true to the indie. I don't remember, maybe someone can tell me if the backs are the same, but I know it had this blue gilding still. But yeah, I don't know. This is just another one for me. Like, even though it's a lot more vibrant, it still feels kind of dream poppy. Maybe it's leaning a little more shoegaze, which I'm not sure I entirely understand the difference, but when I think shoegaze, I think something a little bit more deep, a little bit more dark, even more fuzzed out in the way that it sounds type of thing. But this is another deck actually that has really cool changes to the court cards. So the queens are the nurturers. The action is the knight. And then we'll see when we come across the other ones. But these both read beautifully together. At one point, my practice with them was pulling a card from here and then the tarot cards like above and below it to kind of expand on that message or get context for that message. And that would be what I journaled about for that evening. But there's something also with this that just feels kind of gazing into the past and the future at the same time, and wanting to just sink into a different world. I think that's the thing with these, is it transports you, especially this Oracle deck. And with this one, the guidebook is really cool. If you happen to have it and haven't pulled it out for a while, I totally recommend it. Sometimes there's poetry, not every single card has that. But then you get the upright, you get the reversed, and then it speaks about the art, which I always love when you have something that's so unique and a little bit abstract. I want to say this is surrealist abstract, maybe. I like that there's that much thought put into the artwork that they're then sharing what that image is about. But even this with initiation, I feel like it does often present very self-explanatory. It's like reaching into a new threshold of time and space for yourself. Ooh, the High Priestess, the Void, 3 of Swords. So they work beautifully together. They feel summery to me. And I love the balance in this deck where the darker cards are really dark and then the brighter cards are more uplifting, or even this with the 4 of Swords, like it captures the energy of like, man, isn't that a place where you just want to go take a rest for a minute and not be running your gears all the time. Or the 7 of Swords, where it's like being concealed in a carefully portrayed portrait. I just love that. And the imagery in this Oracle deck is so powerful. They just pair really beautifully together. And and I love the way they read. Yeah, so action, again, that's the knight, and then messenger is the page. And I think the wands was like my favorite. Like when you laid out the page, the action, the nurturer, and then I forget what they called the king in this. But when it was all laid out, especially in the wands, I remember thinking like, oh my God, I don't know what that movie is, but I want to see a movie with all these characters in it, because I don't know, the court cards in this deck really capture the characters of the court cards very beautifully and kind of evocatively. Mastery of Swords, that must be what the knights are. Which wasn't the other deck, Mastery, so there we go. Got a common theme there. And yeah, again, this was another collage deck, or at least the tarot, that really fit into a Dream Pop deck list for me. Decks that I would pull out when I'm really feeling like being in that atmosphere, being in that mood. So the next deck, I think, is going to be the last collage deck. We only have one pairing after this, but... And this isn't... I think, like, some of the images aren't super collage. Like, this is just a zoomed-in traditional artwork. But this is the Love Letter Tarot by Rose Bay. And this also, 100%, has that romantic, soft kind of vibe, has a bit of that like ethereal, dreamy, taking you kind of to another place energy to it. And like this is like the cover art of an album for me in Dream Pop land. But yeah, it's funky. It does its own thing here and there. It's got a lot of repurposed art, and then a mix of other, bit more modern elements that pop in here and there. And I love the aesthetic of this. I haven't read with it a ton, but it's another one that I think has that like summer, like self-romanticizing type of energy. And this is great for the Death card. For a kind of love-oriented deck. I'm sure this would be great for relationship readings. And Queen of Wands and Artemis. Love that. And then Queen of Hearts, King of Hearts. So yeah, this definitely came to mind when I was putting together this list. Because this, and kind of like bringing it back to the 80s, which I think is when Dream Pop and Shoegaze kind of had their heyday for the most part, although I think it's coming back. Is it coming back? It's coming back in my world, or it has for me in the past few years. And I do occasionally come across people who are also into that type of music, so let's say it's coming back. But yeah, this was another one that came to mind. Of course, Two of Hearts with Romeo and Juliet. And then Five of Hearts with actual Romeo and Juliet. So this one is probably the last collage deck that I have in my collection that really comes to mind when I think of Dream Pop atmosphere and what kind of decks I would want to pull out, or if I was trying to pair with that sort of music style, what I would be pulling out. I love the card backs. Like, that was really cute choice. So the last two decks are going to be a pair. That's Loputyn Oracle. Here are the backs. Paired with Honey Lavender. This was, this pairing was definitely one that made me bring out the Dream Pop playlists. And, what I like about it, too, for tarot reading, I don't tend to like music where there's singing in it. But with Dream Pop or Shoegaze, both have this, like, usually the vocals are like behind smoke and behind sheer curtains, and they're sort of in the background in the distance, and everything's really fuzzy. And so it's kind of perfect for like what would you call bibliomancy, but for song lyrics? I don't know, but whatever that might be called, it's perfect for that, because like I would be doing a reading and totally be zoned into the cards, and then there would just be this like string of lyrics like synchronistically lining up as I'm kind of sitting with the messages I'm getting in the cards that would add to it when I'm just like shuffling a playlist. And there was something about that was really beautiful and made a reading even more impactful. I love Honey Lavender Tarot. Again, it has that very soft, muted sunset kind of atmosphere, or dusk type of atmosphere. And Loputyn is such a great deck for getting to know yourself again and kind of reclaiming yourself again and really sitting with you in a way. And so these two paired together, between the fact that they visually look beautiful, but then also just when I was working with them, lined up so beautifully in readings and kind of bounced off of each other so beautifully in readings. This is like one of my perfect pairs. And I can't even tell you, I think I mentioned this when I did either my walkthrough or another video with Honey Lavender, how excited I was to have a deck to pair with Loputyn, because I didn't really. And at first I was having trouble connecting with it, and I really wanted a tarot deck to help me kind of give context to the cards. The guidebook in this is short and sweet. It's not overwhelming. You know, you get like a little bit more than half a page sometimes, but it's usually just about half a page. The only thing I've thought about is maybe trying to put the keyword for the card on the card, but I really don't want it to look, I don't want it to look like I wrote it on there by hand, to be honest. So I haven't done that, but I'm considering it because it is helpful to kind of just have at least a keyword to bounce off of to know where to land. But there's also the challenge of kind of trusting yourself and what you receive from looking at the image. And that's sort of part of its offering of how to work with it. So for now, I'm not doing anything with that. I'm letting that be a thing. And I've also thought about creating a guidebook for this of my own, because there are times where the image and what's in the guidebook don't quite dial in on the nuance that I'm picking up when I look at it for myself. But like even flipping through this, it's so fun. Like the blues all show up together and then the pinks all show up together usually, and it's just kind of funny. But they're very complementary. And working with these two is very much like a healing kind of pairing. The time I was working with it, like kind of healing wounds I had with myself, and particularly around like mother wounds. Both of these were really coming forward for that. Loputyn has this like maiden coming into her own sense of identity type of story to it and type of energy to it. And I think that's what really lent itself to kind of looking at some of those earlier, mother type wounds and where they have left marks that have reduced mobility in a sense, and kind of massaging those out, if you will, to work out the kinks and kind of forgive things in the past, or at least find a way to reclaim your story. I think that was my experience with these decks paired. Of course, I left all the oopsie cards in the back, so I might have to blur that out. Because there are some cards in this that are a little much, perhaps. But I love this deck, and I love it paired with Honey Lavender. And they totally put me in that space of kind of going into the dream space of your subconscious, but in like a soft container, a safe way of going in, so to speak. and they feel sort of end of summer in a way, so I might be pulling them out again. They're sort of like winter into spring and then end of summer for me, I think is what I'm gathering. Honey Lavender I've only had for the past, I got it in winter, I'm pretty sure. So I do think, by the way, I do think there's a new version of it out, but the cardstock is different. I personally wouldn't be into it. I like that this one has the linen finish and the colors seem a bit softer for me, which I like. The fact that this is very diffused looking and you're in like this sort of milky landscape, if you will, is what drew me to it and what makes it pair so well with Loputyn. So I don't know if there will be another edition in the future where they maybe go back to that. I kind of hope so, because I think the new version has like the effect of the colors is a little bit more sharp or a little more saturated, which wasn't really what drew me to the deck in the first place. But I don't know, up to you what you like, right? There's actually one more deck that I can't believe I forgot to add, because I'd wanted to do this video last summer, actually, but didn't manage to record it before summer was over, and then the mood, wasn't there anymore. But that is Dreamgate Oracle. Kind of works out better because I have a couple more decks now than I would have then for this, but this deck, I think was the deck that got me into Dream Pop, if that makes any sense. Because when I find a deck that I love and I want to work with it for a season of time, like I'm usually trying to find some sort of ambient playlist, but I somehow stumbled upon Dream Pop and was like, man, that's kind of the perfect music for this, even though I usually restrict the music I'm putting on in the background to just background ambient music, because like I said, while the vocals are there, they're very diffused and in the background and kind of under layers of gauze is how it sounds when you're listening to Dream Pop. But this is the kind of imagery that first got me connecting with that music, I think, because there's something uplifting and ethereal and otherworldly in this type of artwork. Again, this is a Danielle Noel deck, and this one's unique to her other ones, I would say. It still has that celestial thing going on and, dream realms and things like that, but it feels like the energy of it just feels different to me than her other ones. And the deck that I paired this with, I think the last time I was really working with this in depth was Ephemer. I didn't add that to the list here because I don't think that deck itself is necessarily would pull me to open up a playlist with Dream Pop in it, but it does pair very beautifully with this deck. Still, yeah, this one just takes me somewhere else, and the messages in the cards and the way that cards would get pulled synchronistically with what I was feeling in the moment or needing to hear in the moment was always a beautiful experience. So I really connected with this deck. It's another one where I feel like it's sort of connecting with spirit guides type energy and kind of the message that your connections from beyond want to say most directly to you, or at least to me. That's how I experienced it. The guidebook for this is also really great. I love this guidebook and the amount of thought and intention that Danielle put into it. It's really worthwhile to read the introduction of what inspired her, what the deck is really speaking to, and how to work with it, or how she suggests it anyway, because just the way she writes about it kind of helps you open up to this realm. And some of it's, the stuff for beginners, like what even are oracle cards, but the way that she walks through kind of how to use the cards and read for others, and then specifically get into dream journaling, which I didn't quite get into with this deck. at the time. I just worked with it for regular journaling, but I was really itching to do that. So the next time this one comes out into rotation, I'm looking forward to doing that. And then there's some interesting spreads to play with in here that are unique. It's not like your generic type spreads, so I really appreciate that. And then each card, you have the little overview, you have these intention statements or mantras or whatever you want to call them, and then a bit about what that card's representing, kind of condensed, and then the longer explanation, and the message that comes through ending in a question, which you can use as a prompt to pull tarot cards or just to journal about in response to that card and what comes through. But something like this, how can I tune into my energy body more? That's sort of the thing I would pull a tarot card for. I imagine this would pair very beautifully with her other tarot deck, the Moonchild, which, believe it or not, I don't have. That deck is probably pretty much right up my alley, but I always debate, do I want the light version or the dark version? And I know it's probably the dark version, but I don't know, I still find myself debating it because I have quite a few dark decks. So I might kind of base it off which one I think would pair best with this. We'll see at some point. I'm not buying decks lately, but yeah, I almost forgot to add this, so I wanted to bring it in here because back in the day, a year ago, this was the deck that made me think like, oh man, I really want to do a Dream Pop deck list, because that was my ritual with this deck, was to put on that playlist, which unfortunately the one I was using at the time has since been deleted. But to put that on and kind of meditate for a minute and get into that sort of dreamy space, and then pull a card from here and see what message is coming through, and sit with the guidebook a bit and just journal about what that was bringing up for me. So yeah, that is officially the last deck. So I think that about wraps up my Dream Pop deck list. And what would you add to the list? I'm super curious because this is a category of decks that I quite like. And yeah, other than that, I hope you have a lovely day, evening, or whatever it is by you, and I will catch you in the next one.